A shovel plunges into the dirt. A paw swipes again and again at the headstone. The dog won't stop. Its nails are torn, bleeding. A little girl crouches beside it. "Mommy, I hear something." The earth shifts. A fingernail pushes through the soil. Then a scream muffled, human dot. They tear the grave open. One man dead. A woman, gagged, eyes wide. Alive. The dog wasn't mourning. It was begging someone to dig faster before the secret buried under the corpse ran out of air. Not all mourning sounds like crying sometimes, it scratches. The night before the funeral, Ellie had a dream about the red ribbon her mother used to tie in her hair when she was small. Not the silk one, the frayed one, with the rip near the edge. In the dream, her mother was brushing her hair too hard, like she always did when she was thinking about something else. When Ellie turned around to say it hurt, her mother's face wasn't her mother's face. It was someone else's. The morning after, the real one, pale and too still in a dress she never would have chosen, was lowered into the ground behind the old chapel, the one with the bell that hadn't rung since Father Camden died in '03. Ellie stood quiet beside her Aunt Meredith, who smelled like breath mints and lemon dish soap. Her black umbrella shook in the wind, even though there was no rain. A dog sat stiff at the edge of the gathering, eyes locked on the grave. Its ribs showed through a patchy brown coat, and its ears twitched like it was hearing something the others couldn't. Ellie felt it too, a pressure, low and deep like thunder that never comes. They said the name wrong on the prayer card. Eleanor May Langston. Nobody ever called her that. Her mother hated her middle name. The soil was fresh and black. The priest talked too fast. Ellie kept staring at the dog, who didn't blink once. That night, the house was too quiet. The kind of quiet that wraps around your throat. Ellie lay in her childhood bed, where everything felt half an inch too small. Her feet curled against the cold sheets. From the open window, the sounds of the country drifted in. Crickets, wind, and scratch. She sat up. Scratch. Scratch. The dog. She pressed her ear to the screen. A faint howl came from far off, wavering like a thread pulled through bone. The graveyard. She climbed out of bed barefoot, the floorboards cold under her feet. The hallway stretched long, moonlight skimming the picture frames. One had fallen face down, her mother and Meredith at 17, side by side, holding a carnival prize. Ellie never remembered. In the kitchen, the back door creaked as she opened it. The sound hit her again, closer now. But not from above. From below. Scratch. She crossed the field barefoot, weeds brushing her shins, the hem of her nightgown catching dew. The dog was already there, paws pressed into the dirt like prayer. She whispered, "What do you hear?" "The come on me." Dog turned, whined, and then a sound no living thing should make. A scream, muffled, shallow, below ground. Some graves don't wait for morning. She stumbled back, her breath stolen. The ground didn't move, but something beneath it had. The scream was gone, but the scratching it started again. Not frantic, not animal. Rhythmic. Like fingers. She ran. Inside. The house had changed. The lights were on. Meredith was sitting at the kitchen table, perfectly still, sipping cold tea. Her lipstick had bled at the corners, her eyes like two damp stones. "You heard it," Ellie gasped. "The grave. There's someone." Meredith didn't flinch, just stared into her mug. "Drink some water," she said. "It's the grief." Ellie's voice cracked. It was her. Meredith finally looked at her. "Ellie." A pause. Then softer. "She's gone. Let her go." But Ellie saw something flicker in her aunt's expression then. Guilt, or worse, recognition. She looked down. Meredith's hand trembled as she reached for the teacup. A bandage peeked from her wrist, fresh. "What did you do?" Ellie asked. Silence. Then. "She was already gone when we got there." Ellie stepped back. "What are you talking about?" "She said she wanted to die in that house. We honored that." A sob rose in Ellie's throat. There was someone else in the grave. Meredith didn't answer, only sipped her tea. Meredith always said tea calms the nerves. But hers never stopped shaking. Ellie's breath came short and sharp. She looked around the kitchen, really looked. Things were off. Her mother's favorite mug gone. The old clock's hand stuck at 3:17. The photo of Ellie's 10th birthday, ripped down the middle. Her mother and Meredith never forgave each other after the incident, the one they never spoke of. Back in her room, Ellie couldn't sleep. She clutched the old red ribbon from her dream, the real one, tucked inside her jewelry box. She hadn't seen it in years. Was frayed. Yes, but dirty. Too. With soil. She held it to her nose. Not dirt, grave mold. At dawn, the dog was gone. Ellie went to the cemetery alone. The grave was undisturbed. The headstone had a new addition engraved beneath her mother's name. And child lost with her. Her blood turned to ice. She hadn't been pregnant. Unless, no one told her, no one told anyone. She knelt, fingers brushing the dirt. It felt warm. The priest came by, startled to see her. She asked who had arranged the burial. Meredith, he said. She insisted it be done quickly, closed casket, said there was injury. But the autopsy, he frowned. There wasn't one. She was only 48. She was found in bed, peaceful, they said. Ellie's hand clenched. They said, some coffins carry more than silence. That night, Ellie found the box in Meredith's room, hidden under loose floorboards, beneath winter coats and cedar dust. Inside, a flash drive, a newspaper clipping, and a sonogram. The clipping was old, dated 12 years ago. Woman survives attempted buried alive incident. The photo was blurred, but Ellie recognized the eyes, her mother. The article spoke of trauma, memory loss, refusal to speak. She had never told Ellie, but Meredith knew. And the sonogram dated just weeks before the funeral. Ellie sat on the floor, unable to breathe. She played the video on the flash drive, a recording of her mother gaunt, speaking into the camera. If anything happens to me, she whispered, it wasn't an accident. Behind her voice, the dog barked, once, twice, then silence. The screen went black. Meredith never mentioned it. The next morning, Ellie dug, with her hands, with a borrowed shovel, with fury. When the police came, she was screaming, covered in dirt, and clawing at the coffin like it owed her the truth. They didn't believe her, not until they opened it. Two skeletons. One fully grown, one small. Both with fingernails bloodied from inside. And beside them, a red ribbon, still damp. If justice still matters, you'll want the next page. The dog returned that night, sat by the open grave, and began to howl, this time for the living. Grief isn't always quiet. Sometimes it's clawing. Years ago, Olivia had a nightmare where she drowned inside her own mouth. No water, just breathless. Silence folding in. When she tried to scream, her voice floated away like smoke. She woke with dirt under her fingernails. Her mother said it was just a dream, but now the dream had hands. And the hands were hers. The shovel hit something soft, not the coffin. Not yet. Ellie froze, panting. Her palms were blistered, raw where the wood had rubbed her skin open. The dog barked once, sharp, like a match struck in a dark room. The sheriff stood behind her, hand on his hip, squinting through dawn. He hadn't wanted to come. Said it was just the grief, same as Meredith. But something in Ellie's eyes must have made him follow. You're digging up a grave, he said. You better be right. Scratch, he heard it then. His body changed. The ground breathed back. The soil shifted. Ellie dropped to her knees, hands scrabbling through the last layer of loose earth. Her fingers brushed wood, then cloth, then skin. The sheriff swore, radioed for backup, but she wasn't listening. Her mind had tunneled down into the silence beneath her childhood, beneath the prayers said too late, Beneath all the almost they'd buried beside Daniel Langston. A finger twitched, then another. The gag came first. Bloodied fabric, soaked in saliva and soil. The woman's eyes opened wild, rimmed red. Her mouth worked like a broken hinge. Olivia, not a ghost. Not a memory. Alive. They pulled her out, trembling and coated in black muck, as though born again. Through rot, her chest rose in shallow gasps. One shoe missing. A ring still clutched in her left fist. Daniel's, her sister's husband. Ellie flinched. She hadn't thought of that part. The ambulance wailed. Reporters circled like gulls over a spill. Someone offered Olivia water. She didn't drink. She didn't speak. She just stared at the grave like it might open again. The sheriff kept everyone back. But whispers flew. Grave robbery, maybe, mistaken burial, or something worse. But the way Olivia looked at the coffin, like it was a person, that's what made the town afraid. In the hospital, Olivia slept with her fists closed. When Ellie came to visit, she brought the red ribbon in her pocket, though she didn't know. Why? They hadn't spoken in years. Not since the wedding. Not since Olivia whispered something in Daniel's ear that made him look away from Meredith and smile for the first time in months. Now Olivia's lips were cracked and broken. But her eyes followed Ellie like they remembered everything. "You were under the coffin," Ellie said, barely breathing. How did you get there?" Silence. Outside, Meredith stood by the vending machine, punching the same button over and over. Grape soda. Their mother's favorite. The machine blinked. Empty. Meredith didn't move. Ellie watched her for a long time. Her aunt's hands were trembling again, not from cold, from memory. "You knew," Ellie whispered. Meredith didn't answer, just stared through the glass. Ellie stepped closer. "You buried her alive." "No," Meredith's voice was barely there. "I buried the truth." "That's different, but why?" Meredith closed her eyes. "Because she told me to. Not every rescue is wanted." Ellie backed away. "She wanted to die?" Meredith shook her head. "She wanted him to pay. Daniel had died clean. A heart attack in his truck. Or so they'd said." Meredith wiped her face. "Olivia said she had proof. Said if she disappeared, people would ask questions. So if Daniel wouldn't look guilty if she was dead. But why put her under him? She thought it'd be poetic." Meredith's voice cracked. "Said she wanted him to carry her weight, even in death." Ellie stared at her, something ugly twisting inside her chest. "You helped her?" "I loved her." The words hit like ice. Meredith's face crumpled for a second, then set. "I thought it was fake," she said. "The pills, the plan, the timing, it felt like a game. But then the note came, said to wait 36 hours. If she was wrong, dig her up." Meredith looked at her hands. "I was going to, but then." She didn't finish. Olivia had lain beneath that grave for 41 hours. She should not have lived. Ellie turned away. She went back to the hospital room, stood at the edge of the bed, the ring still clutched, the red ribbon in her pocket, warm now from her palm. She pulled it out, placed it on the bed. Olivia's eyes tracked the movement. Her fingers opened. The ring dropped. The ribbon vanished into her fist. A nurse came in. Whispered that Olivia had made a sound earlier. A soft one. "Can she talk?" Ellie asked. "Not yet. But when she does," the nurse nodded, nervous, "they'll want statements." Ellie left before sunset. Outside, the town was shifting. Candles. On doorsteps, flyers, news vans. A boy held a sign. She was breathing. The church bell rang for the first time in 20 years. They said it was Rust. The sheriff sat in his cruiser, staring at his badge. He'd been Daniel's best friend. But the photo on his dashboard, Daniel and Olivia at the lake, summer of '09, had been torn, right down the middle. But no one ever asked who took the picture. Ellie drove past the old Langston farm. The dog was there again, sitting by the gate, watching, waiting. For what? She didn't know. The grave had been filled back in. but something about it still felt. Opened out later that week, Olivia finally spoke, just one sentence. The nurse said her voice cracked like paper. They wrote it down. He wasn't dead when they put me under him. If justice still matters, you'll want the next page. The coffin lid was scratched from both sides. Sometimes the dead protect the living, even when they don't mean to. Claire Langston remembered the way Daniel used to throw rocks at their window after curfew, 3 quick taps. A pause, then one final knock, like punctuation. She'd never forget the rhythm. He always swore he was trying to keep her from falling. Asleep with tears on her face. That rhythm stayed with her long after she stopped opening the window. Now, nearly a decade since their last real conversation, Claire stood in what used to be their mother's kitchen, staring at a framed photo of Daniel on the counter. It leaned slightly to the left, like it hadn't been touched since the funeral. He looked younger in it, grinning beside a rusting truck, his left arm draped over someone cropped from the picture. Whoever held the scissors had only removed part of a sleeve, a woman's sleeve. Lavender silk. Claire turned the frame over. A date in faded marker, October 14th. Last time he smiled like that. She didn't remember taking it. She didn't remember that version of him. The door creaked behind her. "Thought I'd find you here," said Sheriff Dalton. Claire didn't turn. Still playing cleanup? Still looking for answers. She traced the edge of the photo with her thumb. Maybe that's the problem. Some smiles are written over screams. He sat without asking, his boots scraping the linoleum. He was supposed to meet someone the night he died. Claire blinked. Who? We don't know. Burner phone, no texts. Just a call made from his number to an unregistered one. 6 minutes before the crash. She folded her arms. You said heart attack. He looked away. That's what we were told. Not what the autopsy showed. A long silence stretched between them. Claire broke it. He called me that morning. Dalton looked up, startled. You didn't say. I didn't think it mattered. What did he want? She looked down at her hands. Said he had something to give me, something from our father. Dalton's expression shifted. Claire noticed. What? She asked. He hesitated then. Your father's safety deposit box was emptied 2 days before Daniel died. Signature matched his. But my father's been dead 15 years. Dalton nodded slowly. Exactly. Claire gripped the back of a chair. So either Daniel forged it, or someone else did. Outside, the wind picked up. The trees bent like they were trying to whisper secrets through the walls. Claire turned toward the hallway, where their old room still held the dents in the plaster from when they used to throw darts. She hadn't gone in yet. Now she did. The light switch stuck. She flicked it once, twice, and stepped inside. The air smelled of cedar and something older. The twin beds were made, untouched since '08. The bookshelf leaned. A shoe still poked. From beneath the dresser his, size 11. On the desk sat a red envelope. Unlabeled. She opened it with shaking hands. Inside, a photo, Daniel, and Olivia. Not smiling. Not posed, but holding hands, and behind them, barely visible, Meredith, watching. But Meredith's eyes weren't on Daniel. They were on the shadow in the window behind him. Claire sat down hard on the edge of the bed. She remembered that day now. It was the anniversary of the fire, the one no one talked about. She flipped the photo over. A single line in Daniel's handwriting. If anything happens to me, look here. Taped beneath. A small key. To what? She didn't know, but it was cold in her hand. Later that afternoon, Olivia was discharged. Ellie wheeled her down the hallway, past nurses pretending not to stare. When they passed the front desk, a boy dropped a soda can. Olivia flinched hard, then apologized without a voice. Outside, the sun caught the side of her face. The bruises had yellowed. But her eyes hadn't changed. Claire met them by the car. She didn't speak. Just handed Olivia the photo. Olivia's breath hitched. Her fingers trembled. Then she froze. Not at Daniel. At the man behind him, a reflection. Barely visible. But they're thin, tall, holding something, a small box. No one else noticed it, but Olivia did, and when she looked up, her lips moved. No sound. Just a name. Claire leaned in. Say it, she whispered. Olivia's throat worked. Her eyes filled. She pointed to the photo. Then the ground, then her own chest. The breath rushed from Claire's lungs. She knew. The man wasn't just someone Daniel met. He was someone Daniel was hiding her from. The worst monsters don't bury bodies, they bury truth. That night, Olivia stayed with Ellie. The guest room smelled of cinnamon and lemon soap. She lay still, clutching the red ribbon. Ellie brought in tea and didn't ask questions. But before she left, she said, he didn't deserve what happened. Olivia's eyes flicked up. No, she mouthed. He saved me. And then her voice cracked out for the first time, paper thin and aching. That man didn't die by accident, he died saving me. If justice still matters, you'll want the next page. The photo frame shattered overnight, though no one touched it, and the glass broke from the inside. Some truths are kept not in diaries, but in the things they never threw away. When Claire was 10, Daniel caught her trying to run away with a suitcase full of peanut butter crackers and their dead mother's perfume. He didn't yell, just sat beside her on the porch steps until the sun came up, silent. When she finally cried, he said, "Running's fine. But you should at least know what you're running from." Now, years later, she stood alone in his room, the air still holding the ghost of his cologne, cheap pine and old dust. The window cracked just enough to let the wind whisper through. The drawer was locked, not the one everyone opened for socks and receipts. The one beneath it, covered in a layer of cloth that smelled like cedar and grief. Claire had only found it because the desk had shifted after she bumped it, uneven footing, a wobble, and then the dull clunk of wood hitting wood. A key had been taped under the chair. She didn't hesitate. Inside, a flash drive wrapped in an old bus ticket, 3 years expired. A silver chain with no pendant, and a folded napkin with Olivia's name written in the corner, circled twice. Claire didn't breathe as she plugged the drive into her laptop. No label, just a folder. For C. Inside, 7 audio files. Was only 3 seconds. A man sighing, the second Daniel's voice. Claire, if you're hearing this, it means I ran out of time. She paused the recording. Her throat closed. She skipped to the last file. The date read 2 weeks before he died. It was Olivia. Her voice low, worn. Daniel, I need you to stop looking. He'll find me. I know he will. You promised. You said. This place was safe, but nothing stays hidden, not really. You said you'd protect me. Don't forget that. If I disappear again, don't look. Bury the trail, even if it means burying me. Claire's hands trembled. She played it again, and again. She hadn't realized she'd started crying until she tasted salt. Some voices sound alive long after they've begged not to be found. The house creaked behind her. Shadows moved where no one stood. Olivia had been here. Not just recently. Often. The coffee mug with lipstick on the rim. The sweater draped over the couch. The dog. That damn dog. Claire had assumed it was just a stray. But it wasn't. He had a name. Whiskey. Daniel used to whisper it when he thought no one was listening. And now Olivia was asking for him. Down the hall, Ellie's footsteps were soft, careful. She didn't knock. Just stood in the doorway, watching her sister hold the flash. Drive like it might explode. Did you know? Claire whispered. Ellie shook her head. I knew he was hiding something. I didn't know it was her. She said someone was following her. Claire glanced down at the pendantless chain, said he'd find her. Who? I don't know. But Olivia did. She had buried it with her silence, until Daniel tried to dig it up. They were quiet for a long time. The wind moved through the house like memory. Claire finally said, she wasn't just someone he protected. Ellie looked at her, but didn't speak. Claire placed the chain on the desk. She was someone he loved. Ellie's silence deepened, not from surprise. But from recognition. Claire turned to her. You knew that? Ellie didn't nod, didn't deny, just stepped back. He was trying to do the right thing, even at the end. Claire laughed, bitter. The right thing? She ended up in a grave. Because she begged him not to tell. Claire reached for the laptop. Opened a new file. Daniel's voice again. I didn't want it to end this way. But she was so scared. I thought hiding her meant saving her. I thought love was enough. Claire slammed the lid shut. It never is. But there was something in his voice, like he already knew she wouldn't make it out. Later that night, Olivia woke in a sweat. The ribbon lay beside her on the pillow. The window was open. She didn't remember opening it. Where is he? She CROAKED. Ellie appeared in the doorway. Who? Whiskey. You want the dog? Olivia nodded. Why? Olivia looked down. Her hands trembled, because he was the only one who knew I was still alive. The silence that followed was too loud. Ellie drove her, past the old chapel, past the tree Daniel crashed into. Olivia didn't flinch. Just stared. They found the dog behind the fence, waiting. When he saw her, he howled once, then walked to her like no time had passed. She knelt and pressed her face into his fur. Whiskey whined, then pawed at her coat. She pulled back. Something small fell to the ground. A key. Tiny, rust at the edges. Claire recognized it. Same shape. Same groove. As the one Daniel kept on his ring for 15 years. The one that never fit any lock in the house. Claire picked it up. Do you know what this opens? Olivia didn't answer, but her eyes did. Sometimes love leaves behind a key that only fear can fit. Claire went back to Daniel's desk. Every drawer had been opened, except the small tin box hidden beneath the false panel. She hadn't seen it before. The key slid in smooth. Inside, one item, a receipt. Faded. From a motel 2 towns over, dated the day after Daniel's death. Signed in Olivia's name. Claire stared, her stomach twisted. Why would he book a room if he knew she'd be dead? Unless he didn't. Unless someone else. Her hands trembled. She opened her laptop. The flash drive blinked once. Then the files disappeared. All of them. Deleted. No trace. Just one new file. Freshly uploaded. UNTITLED. She clicked. Black screen. Only Olivia's voice. He was never supposed to find me again. If justice still matters, you'll want the next page. The laptop fan whirred like breath held too long, and then just like him, it stopped. Children don't lie. They just hear things adults choose to ignore. When Ellie was 4, she buried her grandmother's brooch in the backyard. Not out of mischief, but because the gold pin had whispered in her ear that it was tired of being worn only at funerals. She hadn't told anyone. Just pressed it into the soft earth and waited for it to stop crying. Now she was 8, and the ground whispered differently. Not objects. Not dreams. Voices. It started the day after the funeral. At first, she thought it was just the wind brushing the old oak tree, or maybe the dog Whiskey scratching behind the chapel again. But one afternoon, while everyone else argued over casseroles and coffins, Ellie knelt in the grass behind the last row of gravestones and pressed her ear to the soil. And the soil breathed, not with lungs, with memory. She heard a woman's voice, low and broken, humming the tune from her mother's music box, the one Meredith had thrown away after Olivia disappeared. She heard a man's voice, too, deeper, apologizing, over and over. That's when the drawing started. At night, she'd wake up shaking, tear open her crayons, and draw what she saw beneath the dirt. Not skeletons, not ghosts. People. Alive. One night, she followed Whiskey. The house was dark, Meredith asleep in her recliner. TV still flickering on mute. Ellie slipped out barefoot, the grass cool against her feet. Whiskey didn't bark. He just trotted toward the backfield, tail low, glancing behind to make sure she followed. She did. He stopped at the grave. The one they had just filled. The earth had settled, but the dog began to paw at it, slow and sure. Ellie watched, trembling. Then, something inside her moved. She dropped to her knees, dug with her hands. The dirt smelled like metal and secrets. Her nails broke. Her breath came in short gasps until she heard it. The second breathing, slower, fainter, but real. Someone was alive. The ground does not forget who was buried in fear. But then a hand grabbed her shoulder. Meredith, dragging her away. Her face half shadow, half fury. "What are you doing?" She hissed. Ellie pointed. "She's in there." "No one is in there," Meredith snapped. "You're imagining things. It's just your grief talking." But Ellie knew the difference. Grief didn't sound like humming. Meredith scrubbed at her, hands clean in the kitchen, muttering about dirt and disease. Ellie watched her fingers, how they trembled, not from age, but something older. Guilt, fear, maybe both. Ellie didn't speak of it again. But she kept drawing. In one picture, a woman lay curled beneath a coffin, her mouth sewn shut with thread. In another, a man pressed his hand to the wood above her, eyes closed, lips moving like prayer. She didn't know his name, but she knew his face. Everyone in this house did. Daniel. Later, when Claire came back to the house, Ellie handed her the drawing without a word. Claire took it, absent-minded at first. But as her eyes moved across the page, her hands began to shake. "You drew this?" Ellie nodded. "You've never met her," Claire said. "And you weren't told about this." Ellie tilted her head. "But I heard her." Claire turned the paper over. No name. Just colors. Crayon reds and browns and a smudge of black that looked like smoke. Claire swallowed hard. "Where? Did you see this?" "Under the dirt," Ellie said softly. "Before you found her." Claire dropped the drawing on the table, stepped back like it burned her. "Who told you his name?" Ellie frowned. "No one." Claire stared at her. "That man's supposed to be dead. And Olivia, she's not supposed to." She trailed off. Olivia was supposed to have never known Daniel, but the picture said otherwise. Hand in hand. Not strangers. Something else. But children don't invent affection. They only echo what they see. Claire stood at the kitchen window, staring out at the graveyard. Whiskey was there again, sitting beside the same patch of dirt, watching the house like he was waiting for someone to confess. Behind her, Meredith entered, saw the drawing on the table, froze. Where did she get this? Claire didn't turn. She says she heard it. In the ground. Meredith's laugh was brittle. She's a child. Claire turned then. So was Olivia when you locked her in the root cellar that night. Meredith went still. Her mouth tightened. She was hallucinating, screaming about someone following her. I was trying to protect her. Claire stepped closer. Or protect yourself. Meredith's hand twitched. You don't know what it was like, watching her lose her grip, the things she claimed. About Daniel. About the man who... She stopped. Claire's voice softened. Who? Meredith looked away. You never knew him, but he knew you. That's why Olivia stayed hidden. To protect you. Some secrets wear a different face every time. They're remembered. Claire turned back to the window. Ellie was in the yard again, drawing with chalk on the pavement. This time, it was a house with no doors. And two shadows outside it. One tall, one missing a face. If justice still matters, you'll want the next page. The next morning, Ellie's drawing was gone, washed away by rain, but the driveway still held the outline of a handprint that didn't match hers. Some walls never forget the screams they absorbed. When Olivia was 11, she locked herself in a closet for 3 hours to see if anyone would notice. They didn't. By the time Meredith found her, she had bitten her own lip raw and was whispering to the wallpaper. She never told anyone what she heard inside that dark. But it whispered again now. The ceiling dripped. Not water, just time. One drop at a time. Somewhere between the weight of unconsciousness and the pull of memory, Olivia floated in a place that smelled like bleach and mildew and something older. Basement. She didn't know how long she'd been down there, but the walls still remembered her. The same black mold spiraled in the corners like fingerprints. The same rusted hinges on the narrow door. The same nail in the far beam where a red ribbon once hung, now gone. She blinked through the dark, mouth gagged, wrists zip-tied, feet bare. The cold had settled into her bones, every breath scraped, her throat like glass. But the worst thing was the silence. She had screamed when she woke, but the sound had just folded inward, like the room swallowed it whole. They never soundproofed it. It was always like this. When they punished her, when she told the truth, she tilted her head and listened. Footsteps above, not his, not Daniel's. Would have kicked the door open by now. She knew the rhythm of mercy, and this wasn't it. Then glass shattering. Upstairs, a slam, a voice, Daniel's voice yelling. She remembered that voice. It cracked open something in her, a memory layered beneath years of denial. He'd come before, once, long ago. But someone stopped him. The door at the top of the stairs creaked open. Light flooded the basement like a wound. She flinched. His boots hit the steps. Hard. 3, 4, 5, then a pause. Live, he said. She blinked. The light behind him framed him like a ghost. He didn't look afraid. He looked furious. He pulled a knife from his coat. Dropped to his knees. She tried to speak. The gag muffled her sob. I'm gonna cut you out of this, he said, voice trembling. But you have to stay quiet. She nodded. The ties snapped. He pulled her forward into an embrace. Her legs wouldn't hold. And then the door slammed again. A second shadow. Behind him. Olivia's breath stopped. Daniel turned. Don't, he said. But they already had. A hand struck his face. A voice. You were never supposed to come back here. Olivia couldn't move. Couldn't think. The shadow stepped into the light, and her heart broke. It wasn't a stranger. It was someone she had loved, someone who knew. You helped him, Olivia whispered. You helped him. Daniel stood slowly. Why? The shadow didn't answer, just stared at Olivia like she was something that should have stayed buried. Daniel's fists clenched. She trusted you. She was confused. She was a child. She was dangerous. That word changed the air. Daniel stepped forward. You buried a woman alive because she was scared. She threatened everything. Do you know what would have happened if people believed her? But the worst betrayals come not from disbelief, but from convenience. Daniel moved faster than Olivia thought possible. He tackled the figure. They crashed into the concrete wall. She tried to stand, failed, crawled toward the stairs. Then the gunshot, not loud. Just final. She turned. Daniel stumbled back. Blood bloomed across his shirt like rust. He fell. The figure turned, face red. Eyes wild. I didn't want this, they said. You were supposed to forget. Both of you. But Olivia never forgot. Not the way they lied to her face. Not the way they smiled when they locked the door. Daniel groaned. Trying to speak. She reached him, cradled his head. I'm sorry, he whispered. I thought I could protect you. You did, she said. You found me. And that was when the footsteps started again. Outside. Voices. Shouting. The shadow panicked, grabbed the gun, but Daniel's hand shot out, gripping their ankle, enough to slow them, enough for Olivia to crawl between them. You already buried me once, she said. You won't do it again. The figure stopped, looked down at her. And for 1 second, just one, Olivia saw it. Fear. Real. Fear. Not of consequence, but of being seen. Of someone finally believing her. Claire burst in, then Sheriff behind her. The room exploded with noise and command and flashlight glare. The shadow dropped the gun. Too late. Claire knelt beside Olivia. Daniel's blood soaked into her jeans. He smiled. Faintly. You came, he said. Of course I did. Olivia looked up into Claire's eyes and whispered, it wasn't a stranger. If justice still matters, you'll want the next page. Later, when the house was empty again, the red ribbon reappeared on the nail, but no one claimed to have put it there. No. Mask is more convincing than a grieving sibling. When Claire was 7, she faked tears at her hamster's funeral. She'd flushed him herself, not because she hated him, but because she liked knowing something was gone that no one else knew she had touched. Meredith praised her for her composure. Said she was strong. Claire learned early that strength didn't mean honesty, it meant convincing everyone else you were fine. Now, at 28, she stood on the church steps in a dark dress that had never seen a wedding. The sky pressed low, full of swollen clouds and eyes she couldn't see but could feel. She clutched Daniel's photo in one hand, a printed image that made him look more like a myth than the complicated man he'd been. Her other hand rested gently on Ellie's shoulder, the pose perfect for cameras. Reporters circled. Neighbors whispered. She kept her face steady. Soft smile. Tilted sorrow. No tears, just the sheen of them. Enough to say on surviving. Such strength. Someone murmured. She turned to the sheriff. I'll do whatever's needed, she said. For Daniel, for the truth. He nodded, but his gaze lingered too long. Not suspicious, yet later. She told the crowd that Olivia had always struggled. That Daniel tried to help her, even when she made it dangerous to love her. A pause. A sigh. She needed more than any of us could give. She didn't mention the grave. The gag. The fact that the dog wouldn't leave her. Brothers sighed because something under that dirt still beat like a second heart. Instead, she said, I think she meant to come home. I just wish she hadn't brought her ghosts with her. The crowd swallowed it, because Claire looked like grief, and grief, they decided, was always the truth. But some masks are glued on with the blood they helped spill. That night, Olivia didn't eat. She sat by the window, watching the porch light flicker. The sheriff joined her quietly. Boots scuffed, hat in hand. He studied her without speaking. Then, finally, you're not scared of her, are you? Olivia shook her head. Why not? She blinked slowly. Because scared people don't bury you alive. They leave. He was quiet a long time. Then he asked what no one else had dared. Do you remember all of it? Not yet, she said. But it's coming back. She turned toward him. Start with her shoes. He frowned. Claire's, she said. The night you found me. One of them still had dirt under the sole. He left without another word. But what Olivia didn't say was where that dirt came from, or whose grave it truly marked. The next morning, Claire opened the vanity drawer in Meredith's bedroom. She didn't knock. Meredith wasn't home. The drawer smelled like dried lavender and expired trust. Inside was the lipstick Claire had borrowed at Daniel's funeral. Dusty rose, chipped at the edge. She ran her thumb along the bullet, that same color now stained. The teacup Olivia had refused to drink from yesterday. She poured it out. Slowly, a dead fly floated up. She washed the cup, polished it clean, like nothing had ever touched it. Then she picked up Meredith's necklace, sterling, shaped like a bell. She held it to her ear. It didn't chime, but she swore she heard something rattle inside. She turned it over. Tiny seam. Unnatural. She didn't open it. Not yet, because something about it felt intentional. Planted. As if Meredith had meant for someone to find it, but not her. Downstairs, Olivia waited, blanket over her lap, sketchbook open. She'd started drawing again, this time. Not graves. Not coffins. A staircase. Winding, endless. And halfway down, Claire, back turn, holding a shovel. Some truths are not buried. They're hidden in plain view, and only children remember the shape of the shadow. That afternoon, the sheriff returned, knelt beside Olivia. She watched him like she already knew what he'd say. You were right. He muttered. Claire lied about when she came home that night. Her car was seen parked by the cemetery at 3:14 a.m. Olivia nodded. She said she got the call at 4. She lied, he said again, this time to himself. She leaned closer. She was already there. His mouth was tight. I can't prove she did it. No, Olivia said. But you can. Prove she didn't stop it. He looked toward the kitchen where Claire stood now, humming. Perfect pitch. Warm tea in her hands. Her shoes were spotless, but she'd thrown the old ones away. The ones with the dirt. Do you think she regrets it? He asked. Olivia paused. Then, I think she regrets not finishing it. CTA, if justice still matters, you'll want the next page. Later, the lipstick-stained cup shattered in the sink, but one shard still held the shape of a smile. When you can't bury a secret, you bury the person who holds it. Daniel had once found a note beneath his windshield wiper, folded twice, no name, no signature, just 3 words. She didn't lie. He kept it, even after pretending to throw it away. Stuffed it in the lining of his coat like something sacred. He hadn't spoken to Olivia in 4 years, but that note cracked something that had been calcified into disbelief. Tonight, he was back at the family house. Alone, rain needled the windows like fingernails. The hallway smelled like rotting wood and Meredith's old perfume-faded gardenia and guilt. Daniel moved slow, the way you walk through the room where someone just died. In his coat pocket, a thumb drive. Small, plastic, harmless looking, but it hummed like it had a heartbeat. He hadn't planned on digging. But the email came anonymously. Subject line, your sister knows. He'd followed the trail. Bank records. Altered dates. A deed forged to show Olivia was never meant to inherit anything. But the real betrayal wasn't in ink. It was in memory. He stood in front of the office door now. The one Claire never let anyone open. She said it was Meredith's old reading room. She said it was locked because of mold. He turned the knob. Unlocked. The smell hit him. First, damp leather. Charred paper, and gardenia too strong to be old. The desk drawer stuck. He yanked it open. Inside, a torn photograph of Daniel and Olivia, smiling, her face scratched out. A ring box, the one he thought he'd lost. And a stained letter in Olivia's handwriting, creased and tear-warped. Read it. Twice. Then he sat down, hand trembling, and realized she never betrayed him. Claire did. It cracked open something in her, a memory layered beneath years of denial. He'd come before, once, long ago, but someone stopped him. The door at the top of the stairs creaked open. Light flooded the basement like a wound. She flinched. His boots hit the steps. Hard. 3, 4, 5, then a pause. Live, he said. She blinked. The light behind him framed him like a ghost. He didn't look afraid. He looked furious. He pulled a knife from his coat. Dropped to his knees. She tried to speak. The gag muffled her sob. I'm gonna cut you out of this, he said, voice trembling. But you have to stay quiet. She nodded. The ties snapped. He pulled her forward into an embrace. Her legs wouldn't hold. And then, the door slammed again. A second shadow. Behind him. Olivia's breath stopped. Daniel turned. Don't, he said. But they already had. A hand struck his face. A voice. You were never supposed to come back here. Olivia couldn't move. Couldn't think. The shadow stepped into the light, and her heart broke. It wasn't a stranger. It was someone she had loved. Someone who knew. You helped him, Olivia whispered. You helped him. Daniel stood slowly. Why? The shadow didn't answer. Just stared at Olivia like she was something that should have stayed buried. Daniel's fists clenched. She trusted you. She was confused. She was a child. She was dangerous. That word changed the air. Daniel stepped forward. You buried a woman alive because she was scared. She threatened everything. Do you know what would have happened if people believed her? But the worst betrayals come not from disbelief, But from convenience. Daniel moved faster than Olivia thought possible. He tackled the figure. They crashed into the concrete wall. She tried to stand. Failed. Crawled toward the stairs. Then. The gunshot. Not loud. Just final. She turned. Daniel stumbled back. Blood bloomed across his shirt like rust. He fell. The figure turned. Face red. Eyes wild. I didn't want this. They said. You were supposed to forget. Both of you. But Olivia never forgot. Not the way they lied to her face. Not the way they smiled when they locked the door. Daniel groaned. Trying to speak. She reached him. Cradled his head. I'm sorry, he whispered. I thought I could protect you. You did, she said. You found me. And that was when the footsteps started again. Outside. Voices. Shouting. The shadow panicked. Grabbed the gun. But Daniel's hand shot out, gripping their ankle. Enough to slow them. Enough for Olivia to crawl between them. You already buried me once, she said. You won't do it again. The figure stopped, looked down at her. And for 1 second, just one, Olivia saw it. Fear. Real. Fear. Not of consequence, but of being seen. Of someone finally believing her. Claire burst in, then sheriff behind her. The room exploded with noise and command and flashlight glare. The shadow dropped the gun. Too late. Claire knelt beside Olivia. Daniel's blood soaked into her jeans. He smiled. Faintly. You came, he said. Of course I did. Olivia looked up into Claire's eyes and whispered, it wasn't a stranger. If justice still matters, you'll want the next page. Later, when the house was empty again, the red ribbon reappeared on the nail, but no one claimed to have put it there. No. Mask is more convincing than a grieving sibling. When Claire was 7, she faked tears at her hamster's funeral. She'd flushed him herself, not because she hated him, but because she liked knowing something was gone that no one else knew she had touched. Meredith praised her for her composure. Said she was strong. Claire learned early that strength didn't mean honesty. It meant convincing everyone else you were fine. Now, at 28, she stood on the church steps in a dark dress that had never seen a wedding. The sky pressed low, full of swollen clouds and eyes she couldn't see but could feel. She clutched Daniel's photo in one hand, a printed image that made him look more like a myth than the complicated man he'd been. Her other hand rested gently on Ellie's shoulder, the pose perfect for cameras. Reporters circled. Neighbors whispered. She kept her face steady. Soft smile. Tilted sorrow. No tears, just the sheen of them. Enough to say I'm surviving. Such strength. Someone murmured. She turned to the sheriff. I'll do whatever's needed, she said. For Daniel. For the truth. He nodded, but his gaze lingered too long. Not suspicious, yet later. She told the crowd that Olivia had always struggled. That Daniel tried to help her, even when she made it dangerous to love her. A pause. A sigh. She needed more than any of us could give. She didn't mention the grave. The gag. The fact that the dog wouldn't leave her. Brothers sighed because something under that dirt still beat like a second heart. Instead, she said, I think she meant to come home. I just wish she hadn't brought her ghost with her. The crowd swallowed it, because Claire looked like grief, and grief, they decided, was always the truth. But some masks are glued on with the blood they helped spill. That night, Olivia didn't eat. She sat by the window, watching the porch light flicker. The sheriff joined her quietly, boots scuffed, hat in hand. He studied her without speaking. Then, finally, you're not scared of her, are you? Olivia shook her head. Why not? She blinked slowly. Because scared people don't bury you alive. They leave. He was quiet a long time. Then he asked what no one else had dared. Do you remember all of it? Not yet, she said. But it's coming back. She turned toward him. Start with her shoes. He frowned. Claire's, she said. The night you found me. One of them still had dirt under the sole. He left without another word. But what Olivia didn't say was where that dirt came from, or whose grave it truly marked. The next morning, Claire opened the vanity drawer in Meredith's bedroom. She didn't knock. Meredith wasn't home. The drawer smelled like dried lavender and expired trust. Inside was the lipstick Claire had borrowed at Daniel's funeral. Dusty rose, chipped at the edge. She ran her thumb along the bullet, that same color now stained. The teacup Olivia had refused to drink from yesterday. She poured it out. Slowly, a dead fly floated up. She washed the cup, polished it clean, like nothing had ever touched it. Then she picked up Meredith's necklace, sterling, shaped like a bell. She held it to her ear. It didn't chime, but she swore she heard something rattle inside. She turned it over. Tiny seam. Unnatural. She didn't open it. Not yet, because something about it felt intentional. Planted. As if Meredith had meant for someone to find it, but not her. Downstairs, Olivia waited, blanket over her lap, sketchbook open. She'd started drawing again. This time, not graves. Not coffins. A staircase. Winding, endless. And halfway down, Claire, back turned, holding a shovel. Some truths are not buried. They're hidden in plain view, and only children remember the shape of the shadow. That afternoon, the sheriff returned, knelt beside Olivia. She watched him like she already knew what he'd say. "You were right," he muttered. Claire lied about when she came home that night. Her car was seen parked by the cemetery at 3:14 a.m. Olivia nodded. She said she got the call at 4. "She lied," he said again, this time to himself. She leaned closer. She was already there. His mouth was tight. "I can't prove she did it." "No," Olivia said. "But you can. Prove she didn't stop it." He looked toward the kitchen where Claire stood now, humming, perfect pitch. Warm tea in her hands. Her shoes were spotless, but she'd thrown the old ones away, the ones with the dirt. "Do you think she regrets it?" he asked. Olivia paused. "Then, I think she regrets not finishing it. Titane, if justice still matters, you'll want the next page." Later, the lipstick-stained cup shattered in the sink, but one shard still held the shape of a smile. When you can't bury a secret, you bury the person who holds it. Daniel had once found a note beneath his windshield wiper, folded twice, no name, no signature, just 3 words: "She didn't lie." He kept it, even after pretending to throw it away. Stuffed it in the lining of his coat like something sacred. He hadn't spoken to Olivia in 4 years, but that note cracked something that had been calcified into disbelief. Tonight, he was back at the family house, alone. Rain needled the windows like fingernails. The hallway smelled like rotting wood and Meredith's old perfume-faded gardenia and guilt. Daniel moved slow, the way you walk through the room where someone just died. In his coat pocket, a thumb drive, small, plastic, harmless looking, but it hummed like it had a heartbeat. He hadn't planned on digging. But the email came anonymously. Subject line: "Your sister knows." He'd followed the trail. Bank records. Altered dates. A deed forged to show Olivia was never meant to inherit anything. But the real betrayal wasn't in ink. It was in memory. He stood in front of the office door now. The one Claire never let anyone open. She said it was Meredith's old reading room. She said it was locked because of mold. He turned the knob. Unlocked. The smell hit him. First, damp leather. Charred paper, and gardenia too strong to be old. The desk drawer stuck. He yanked it open. Inside, a torn photograph of Daniel and Olivia, smiling, her face scratched out. A ring box, the one he thought he'd lost. And a stained letter in Olivia's handwriting. And realized she never betrayed him. Claire did. Same chipped mug Daniel used to steal from Meredith's cabinet. He said the crack made the heat sweeter. She held it close now, didn't drink. Just held, like something fragile had returned to her hands. And she didn't dare move in case it vanished. The sheriff cleared his throat. "We have enough to open." A case, but it won't be clean. She's careful. Always was. She's not careful, Olivia said softly. She's just practiced. He looked at her. You sure you want this? No, she said. But I need it. He nodded. There's more, he added. Your mother left something behind. In the safe deposit box. She turned. What? He hesitated. A necklace, bell-shaped, and a letter. Addressed to you. Olivia's knees nearly buckled, not from sentiment, from memory. She had seen that necklace once hanging from Meredith's rearview mirror. The same week Claire pushed her down the stairs and called it an accident. Where is it now? She asked Dot. He tapped the inside pocket of his coat. You'll get it, but not tonight. Why? Because it's dated 1 week after you went missing. Olivia's face went blank. She knew I was alive. Yes, he said. She knew. Some monsters don't wear masks. They sign letters and kiss. Cheeks goodnight. She moved to the record player. Daniel's old vinyl was still there. Scratched. Warped. But she placed the needle anyway. The room filled with his music. Gentle. Imperfect. Melody that stuttered where it once soared. She sat back down. Took the phone again. Hit replay. Daniel's voice again. Softer this time. Like it had waited for her. I was supposed to be your brother. She closed her eyes, Dot, and this time she let herself cry. Not loud. Not shattering, Dot, just enough to wet the sleeves of his sweater. If justice still matters, you'll want the next page. The voicemail ended, but her grip on the phone tightened. Because now, she finally had proof that someone once believed her, even if it came too late. Some justice doesn't come with applause. Just silence. Claire didn't scream when they came for her. She didn't run. She opened the front door herself, barefoot, hair undone, the same wine glass she always carried, balanced between 2 fingers. As if it were a routine delivery. As if the knock hadn't been a reckoning. Olivia watched from across the street, Dot, through the rain, through the memory. Claire looked directly at her, didn't blink. Just sipped once before handing the glass to the deputy like it was an heirloom. Olivia didn't wave, didn't move, just let it happen. Because sometimes justice doesn't arrive with sirens. It walks in quiet shoes and closes the door gently behind it. Inside the courthouse, no reporters, no murmurs. No rows of strangers hoping for spectacle. Just chairs, wooden, bare. The kind that creak like old bones. Olivia sat in the back, coat buttoned to her throat. Not a single person turned to look at her, and she was glad. She didn't need to be seen. She needed to watch. Claire's lawyer asked for a sealed hearing. No cameras. No gallery. Out of respect for the family, he said. As if there had ever been one. As if what Claire did could fit inside words like respect. The judge agreed. Too old. Too tired. Too close to Meredith. To be neutral. But even he couldn't ignore the documents. The USB Olivia had tucked into her old music box, the one she used to hide notes in as a child, believing if she folded paper small enough, it couldn't be ignored. The sheriff had found it days after Daniel died, inside. Timestamps, scans, letters, bank transfers, audio. A voice, Meredith, saying, "Make her disappear quietly, Claire. Just like we practiced." Olivia never listened to the full clip. Coulden. Single quotes. She didn't need to. She'd lived it. Some confessions come after the funeral. Others come as a whisper inside the wall you used to sleep beside. Claire didn't speak during the hearing. Not once. Didn't ask for mercy. Didn't flinch when they read the charges. Fraud, attempted murder, conspiracy, tampering with a will. Only once did her hands shake when the bailiff set down the red leather folder marked testimony. Oh, Reed. That name, that middle initial. It didn't belong to Claire. And for a moment, she looked small, like a girl in someone else's coat, like someone who once believed she was doing what she had to. The folder stayed sealed. Claire's team agreed to A plea deal before it could be read aloud. And just like that. No trial. No witness stand. No truth spoken where it might echo. Claire was let out through the side door. Still barefoot, still dry-eyed. Olivia left minutes later. No applause, just a hallway with flickering lights. And the sound of the janitor humming something broken and off-key. She passed the courthouse steps where the dog sat again, Daniel's dog, still waiting, like it knew more needed to be said. It didn't bark. Just lifted its head and laid it back down. Like grief had become routine. But the dog wasn't just waiting for Claire. It had once dug for something Olivia was still afraid to name. Back at the cabin, she opened the envelope Claire had sent last week. No note. Just a single photograph. Young Olivia, asleep on the porch. Swing. Daniel beside her, holding her hand. Claire, in the background, blurry, watching. The edges were torn. One corner burned. Olivia flipped it over. Nothing written, but there pressed between the photo and the envelope was the bell-shaped necklace Meredith had worn. Olivia stared at it for a long time. It didn't feel like guilt. It felt like a dare. She strung it around her neck anyway, not because it belonged to her, but because it didn't belong to anyone else anymore. She walked to the old dresser, pulled open the bottom drawer. Inside, her sealed testimony. A second copy. She placed it beside the music box. Sat down. And began to write. Not for the court. Not for the sheriff. For Ellie. Because one day, she'd asked. And Olivia refused to let silence raise her the way it had raised them. She wrote slow. Every word like a stitch pulling shut something too wide to ever close clean. She stopped only once, to sip from Daniel's old coffee mug, still chipped, still his. Some stories aren't passed down. They're hidden in objects waiting for someone brave enough to listen. That night, Olivia dreamed of the courthouse, but it was empty. Dust on every bench. Cobwebs across the gavel. And on the steps Claire, younger. Hair braided tight, hands folded like she was waiting for permission to speak, but her mouth was sewn shut with thread that looked like piano wire. She woke gasping. Neck damp. The bell-shaped necklace cold against her throat. If justice still matters, you'll want the next page. Outside the courthouse, the dog waited one more night, eyes fixed not on the door Claire had walked through, but the window above it, where someone once watched the truth walk past and chose to close the curtain. Forgiveness is planting something where a wound once was. The first time Olivia walked back into the house, she carried nothing but the keys and the dog's leash. She stood just inside the threshold. The light behind her, the dark pressing forward. The air still held the faint, bitter memory of mothballs and cologne, Daniel's scent. His silence. The dog padded past her and curled up in the same spot he'd laid the morning after the funeral, just left of the staircase. Nose tucked to tail, like time had folded in on itself. She closed the door and didn't turn on the lights. In the quiet, the walls remembered. They pulsed. She could still hear the echo of her own breath when she'd been dragged here months ago, before the dirt, before the dark. The basement had held her first. Now the upstairs held her grief. But the land, she thought. Maybe the land could forgive her before she forgave herself. Some things are too raw to bury, so you plant them instead. The next morning she dug, not in the back where the grave had almost become hers, but beside it. A few feet off, the soil was reluctant, heavy with memory. Roots tangled like old lies. She didn't use gloves, wanted the dirt under her nails, wanted the ache in her shoulders. She needed it to cost something. By the third day, the tips of her fingers were cracked and bleeding. She planted lavender, then rosemary, then a plum tree, because something had to grow. Even here, she never said the words out loud, but every seed she dropped into the earth felt like an apology no one had asked for. Inside the house, she left most of Daniel's things untouched, not out of reverence, but because moving them felt like pretending he hadn't once betrayed her breath by breath. There was a photo still on the mantel, Daniel and Claire, their arms looped. There. Smiles perfectly rehearsed. She didn't throw it away. She turned it down, face against the wood, like punishing a child who wouldn't confess. The dog would sit beside the picture some nights, whine once, then look at her like he remembered. She fed him by hand at first, not out of pity, but to remind them both what trust looked like in small rituals. Olivia kept wearing the necklace Claire had sent, the bell pendant that had belonged to Meredith. She wore it like a scar she wasn't ready to cover, and sometimes, when she reached for her coffee mug, the pendant would chime softly against the ceramic. The sound haunted the kitchen, Claire's ghost without a grave, but the pendant wasn't the only thing left behind. There was a drawer in Daniel's desk Olivia hadn't dared open. Until now. It was the last one. The one he'd locked. She found the key behind a loose tile in the laundry room, taped to a folded napkin that read, in Daniel's handwriting, "Some truths can't be spoken, only carried." Inside the drawer, a copy of Olivia's old journal, the one she'd lost at 16. A letter, never sent, addressed to her. Just her name on the envelope, and a ring box. Not the engagement ring he'd given Claire. Smaller. Simpler. Inside. A note tucked into the velvet. "This was for the night I was too cowardly to choose you." She didn't cry. Not then. For Daniel. Not even for the version of him who might have been decent. She slipped the ring on once. It didn't fit. Not anymore. She buried it beneath the lavender. No marker. No ceremony. Just one deep breath. And then silence. The garden began to rise in color. Purple. Green. Dusky gold. Like memory softened by light. Some days, Ellie would come by. She'd help water, ask quiet questions. Never press too hard. Once, she held a dead leaf in her palm and said, "Maybe this one's ready to go." And Olivia had nodded, even though she wasn't sure if Ellie meant the leaf or something else. Claire was still alive. Prison hadn't erased that. But Olivia stopped waiting for justice. She started writing instead. Letters she never sent. Drawings she never showed. One was a sketch of the house buried in blossoms. Another was just a single, unblinking eye like the one she'd stared into from beneath the coffin lid. She burned that one. Some images aren't meant to last. They're meant to bleed into ashen memory. Every evening, she sat on the porch swing. Daniel had once told her it creaked too loud. Now she found comfort in the sound. It was the only thing in this house that hadn't. Lead. The swing, the wind, and the dog. These were the things that didn't change. Everything else had. Forgiveness didn't come in a wave. It came in dirt under her nails. It came in the ache of kneeling. In the scent of rosemary on her skin. In letting herself miss someone who didn't deserve to be missed. If justice still matters, you'll want the next page. That spring, the plum tree bloomed over the spot she was once meant to vanish, and no one could explain why its blossoms grew red. The final chapter isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just enough. Before she ever knew what betrayal meant, 5-year-old Olivia once whispered her secrets to the rosebush behind the barn, convinced petals could keep a promise longer than people. The bush died the next winter. The secrets never told. Now, years and lifetimes later, she crossed the cemetery lawn with a different confession folded in her fist, and the bell pendant tapping against her sternum in a slow, metallic heartbeat. Daniel's grave waited beneath the birch whose branches still leaned like eavesdroppers. The dog, her constant, silent witness, kept pace at her side, head low, paws soft on the dewy grass. The sun had slipped below the church roof, turning the marble headstones the color of bruises. She didn't hurry. This moment asked for stillness, not spectacle. She passed row after row, names irrelevant to her story, yet humming with their own undone endings, and finally stopped where Daniel lay. A new granite slab bore his name, and beneath it, the chiseled line he'd once scribbled on a napkin as a joke: "Love is the echo left behind." Echo, the word rang like a dare. She knelt, knees in the damp earth, inhaled the smell of wet stone and cut grass, and laid the torn envelope on the headstone. She unfolded its contents, a single handwritten letter on stationery, flecked with dried lavender petals. The ink bled at the edges where her tears had dropped while writing, still legible. She needed it that way. "Daniel," she said, voice no louder than the rustle of the birch leaves. "I don't know if graves can listen, but I've run out of living ears." Her hands shook. She steadied them on the smooth stone. "I loved you. That's the first truth. And it's the hardest one because it survived everything you did and everything I became to outlive you." The pendant chimed softly, counterpointing her heartbeat. "I hated you too. Hated how easily you believed the worst of me when believing me would have cost you comfort, maybe cost you Claire." A breath. The dog whined once, like punctuation. "But hate is heavy, and I'm tired. So here's what I'm planting instead." She read the next lines silently, confessions about nights in the basement, about counting spiders for company, about the click of Claire's heels overhead. Memories so raw they blistered thought. Speaking them would scorch the quiet she'd come to claim. Instead, she folded that page back, pressed it to her lips, and felt forgiveness seep through paper into skin. Somewhere beneath her, wood groaned. The way it had when she'd clawed its lid from the inside. A sound memory shouldn't own anymore. Yet it rose like trapped breath seeking escape. She swallowed, continued aloud. "I'm sorry I waited until you were underground to speak plainly. I'm sorry the last time you held my hand, you used it to pry the coffin nails instead of slip on the ring you once promised. But I'm grateful too. Grateful you tried even late, even bleeding, because your trying gave me one unbroken fact to stand on when everything else was quicksand." Wind gathered, lifting strands of her hair. They whipped her face like ghosts, insisting she hurry. She didn't. "There's news," she whispered. "Claire wrote from the prison infirmary. Said she still dreams of the rose-patterned china. Set Meredith loved, the one she shattered during the screaming match that ruined our last Christmas. She keeps a shard tucked under her pillow, lipstick still staining the rim, so she'll never forget what guilt tastes like." She closed her eyes, saw it, Claire alone with a fragment edged in regret, pressing it to her lips like communion. A flicker of humanity, even in self-inflicted punishment. Olivia may herself honor the image. Forgiveness demanded she see thee. Wound under the cruelty. Blocks away, the church bell began its top of the hour lament, 9 slow tolls. Each clang tremored through the ground, rattling the pendant, echoing inside her ribs. Yet if someone had listened closer, they might have noticed a smaller, higher note weaving through the bell's cry, the whispered chime of a tiny, silver bell around a survivor's neck. Olivia lowered the letter to the earth. "I'm leaving. This here by choice. No one forced my hand. No gag, just me deciding where my words belong." She reached into her jacket and pulled out a packet of plum tree seeds, the same variety she'd planted over the almost grave. Seeds that promised. Red blossoms come spring. She tucked 2 into the folded letter, let the paper cradle them. Her fingers brushed the scar on her wrist, faint now but forever texturing her skin. With her other hand, she pressed a small garden trowel, Daniel's old, its wooden handle smooth from his grip, into the soil, a foot from the headstone. The earth gave easily, as though recognizing her touch from that frantic night of clawing and rescue. 6 inches down, she set the letter, seeds, and trowel in the hollow, then filled it back, patting the mound flat. The dirt, newly turned, exhaled a scent of rusted iron, as if acknowledging the blood it once tasted and promising not to thirst again. She sat back on her heels, palms muddy, and let silence settle. One birch leaf spiraled onto the mound, a soft punctuation mark. "If justice still matters, you'll want the next page," she whispered, not to Daniel, but to herself, to whatever chapters waited beyond the cemetery gate. Then she chuckled, surprised at the sound. Marketing lines had no business in a prayer, yet the words fit. Healing, like story, needed hooks to keep turning forward. Footsteps approached. Ellie emerged from between the headstones, Jean cuffs soaked, carrying the chipped mug of cocoa lipstick rimmed. But not Claire's shade. She offered it wordlessly. Olivia sipped, sweet, scalding, real. They didn't speak. Instead, Ellie produced a tiny USB drive from her pocket, set it on the grave. A silent setup, insurance, truth stored in plastic, waiting in case history tried to rewrite itself again. Olivia nodded gratitude. Caution, alliance, all in one small dip of her head. The dog lifted its muzzle to the birch canopy. No howl this time, just a long breath released as if concluding its vigil. Nobody noticed the courthouse janitor standing by the gate, hat in hand, eyes wet. He'd swept the hallway outside Claire's hearing, pocketed an unburned receipt that proved Meredith's final bribe. Tonight, he simply watched the garden grow. Clouds parted. Moonlight slipped across Daniel's name, turned the granite. Silver. Olivia traced the letters once. One last goodbye carved into the weight of stone. Pride in survival softened to smallness before mortality's bedrock. Yet suspicion of the world, of herself, eased into quieter faith. She rose. Dirt clung to her knees. She didn't brush it off. Walking away, she felt the seeds beneath the soil, tiny hearts beginning their secret labor. Maybe one day plum blossoms would shade this grave, petals red like the ribbon once stained with earth. She paused at the gate, hand on cold iron, and glanced back. The mound looked ordinary now, indistinct among countless others. Yet she knew, under that modest hump lived confession, apology, and the beginning of a tree determined to bloom where even breath had once been stolen. The dog nudged the gate, time to go. She followed, steps lighter than when she'd come. The pendant at her throat gave a final, gentle chime, then fell still, having said enough for one night. Behind her, the soil settled with a hush, as though swallowing a secret only seeds and the dead could keep. The girl who heard the grave scream became the woman who told its story. At 14, Ellie learned that silence isn't absence, it's waiting. She spent years deciphering the spaces between words, learning how grief teaches children to listen even when voices go missing. Now at 22, she sat cross-legged on a hardwood floor in her small city apartment, headphones on. Laptop paused on the final mix of her first podcast episode. The microphone before her flickered red. She was moments from speaking into recollection. She pressed record. 13 years ago, a grave in a sleepy county hid more than dirt. She began, voice quiet but steady. This is Beneath the Bark, the story of Olivia Reed, the sister who clawed her way back to breath after being buried alive beneath her brother's coffin. Ellie reached out to adjust the bell pendant resting on her desk replica. Silver and hollow, an echo motif, a reminder of the small sound that once changed. Everything. She tapped it lightly. A single chime cut through her own hesitation. Enough. I first heard the story not in a newsroom, she continued, but in a whisper from someone barely 8 years old. She pressed her ear to the earth, or maybe the earth pressed itself to her. And she listened. That child never lied. She heard what an entire family chose to ignore. She paused the narrative and inserted a clip of Olivia's voice. Calm and poised, 12 years older, yet unmistakably the same steel beneath water. Justice doesn't need applause, Olivia said. Sometimes it's just silence, Ellie. Let that echo hang. She replayed it once, then pressed on. Olivia's testimony had remained sealed until Ellie obtained the transcript under new laws. She read it into the mic later in the episode. Notes rattled. Evidence lists named Claire Langston as co-conspirator. Land deeds, forged wills, the USB from the music box, all layered detail. Quiet revelations building pressure. Some truths land silently, but their weight bends the world's axis. When Claire's plea deal settled, It erased her from public stage. No trial, no cameras, no headlines. But Ellie had found the courthouse janitor, the one who swept secrets in the hallway. He'd kept Meredith's bribe receipt, tucked in his coat for fear of losing proof of how deep betrayal can go. Ellie played a soft snippet of that receipt being discovered, folded paper. Janitor's hush, door closing. In the editing room, she watched the waveform. Proof had a rhythm. There was no rage, no vengeance, she said softly. Just a wish to restore measure. To believe we weren't the kind of family stories that shatter. Olivia planted a garden. She wrote letters, and she told. She never stopped speaking again. She ended the episode with Olivia's voice again. If you believe in second chances and silent heroes, hit follow. The next story is already digging itself out. Ellie exhaled. The final line rang with intent. A CTA, crafted like a soft bridge to another narrative. It felt right. She lifted her gaze to the window, city lights shimmering like stars caught on glass. The dog, now gray at the muzzle, lay beside her feet, still obedient, still silent witness to stories rediscovered. But there's one more. Secret Olivia's garden is blooming red blossoms that shouldn't grow in that soil. Ellie paused the recording, unhooked the mic, and leaned back. Her wrist brushed the bell pendant. She tugged it free from beneath her sleeve and held it in her palm. She thought of Meredith, frail in the infirmary, clutching a china shard and dreaming of forgiveness she feared she'd never deserve. Guilt had that curious weight. It shrinks the guilty faster than time. And yet Claire had asked forgiveness in her letters. Not for being innocent, but for letting silence do the worst kind of work. Ellie inhaled. Words had power, but memory carried. Voice long after sound. She stood, walked to the bookshelf, and placed the pendant on the shelf beside her podcast award, a small acrylic plaque, etched beneath the bark. Best Investigative Audio, 2025. It sat beside a framed photo. Ellie and Olivia, one shoulder, each standing under blossoming branches behind Daniel's home. The garden behind them glowed purple and gold, lavender and rosemary, a plum tree just visible, budding with tiny red fruits. Ellie touched the photograph. You saved this story, she murmured, not sure who she addressed. Maybe memory. Maybe a sister long grown into witness. Maybe herself. The dog stirred. Ellie knelt, ran her hand along its flank. They had both learned to listen long before believing, with ears, with skin, with dust and memory. She could feel the pulse of roots, of buried secrets watering blossoms. Today, she returned to her chair, opened her podcast dashboard, saw downloads climbing, messages from listeners who'd found hope in the story of silence spoken at last. She smiled, small, like someone who knows this is only beginning. She stood, walked to the door, paused, then dropped the bell pendant into her palm again. She held it up to her ear. A lonely chime, faint final dot, then she walked out, chair empty. Mic silent, recording ended. The city waited. The dog followed, the rest of the story already digging itself out. And somewhere behind her, in a garden she'd never planted, a single plum blossom opened at midnight red as a secret finally spoken.